on guys, today I'm going to be showcasing my Invoker Monk build. Careful to say that this build is quite expensive to make, however you can make it on a budget. You won't be able to kill bosses with it, but you can clear maps quite easily. Starting with the gems, we'll be using a Tempest Fury level 20. You can go below level 20 if you have mana issues, there will be no problem at all. We'll socket that with Rage. Now, Rage gives us 1% attack speed per 1 Rage. We can go to a maximum of 30 Rage. We'll use Primal Armament for more elemental damage, Martial Tempo for 25% more attack speed, Electrocute so we electrocute our enemies, and Inspiration just to be able to cost less mana. Moving on to Charge Staff, we'll be linking that with Overcharge for more magnitude of shocks, Persistence for more buff duration, Culling Strike so that we essentially kill an enemy when they reach a certain threshold of life. For unique enemies it's 5%, I believe for rares it's 20%, and we'll be using Rising Tempest. What Rising Tempest does, I believe that it gives us 12% more elemental damage per elemental type. That would be lightning, cold, and fire. So, moving on to Tempest Bell, we'll be linking that with Overabundance so that we can have more bells on a certain target, Concentrated Effect for more area damage, Close Combat so that we deal more damage the closer we are to our enemies, and Execute so that we deal more damage per hit against enemies that are on low life, and that would be a 35%. So essentially this build is about ramping up damage. The less the enemy has, the less health the enemy has, the more damage we'll be doing. Moving on to our Herald of Thunder, we'll be linking that with Cold Infusion so that the Herald deals cold damage, Lightning Mastery, Ambush so that we deal more crit strikes to enemies on full life, and Glaciation to help our freeze build up. Now, Herald of Ice, we'll be linking that with Lightning Infusion so that the Herald deals lightning damage, so that the two Heralds will be able to proc off each other. We'll be linking that with Long Shot so that we kill enemies that are off screen, Conduction to shock our enemies, and Cold Mastery for an additional level. Now moving on to Wind Dancer. Wind Dancer is an aura that gives you charges. Those charges will explode when enemies register and hit on you. Those charges additionally give you evasion. We have now 72 evasions. If we disable Wind Dancer, we'll have now 56. So we're gonna link that with Blind, Pin, and Maim. When the enemies hit you, the charges will proc, they will explode, and they will be blind, pinned, and maimed. In addition, we'll link this with Precision for more precision on the character. And here we have the Hand of Chayula, where we want to socket Voltaic Mark, Conduction, and Heightened Curse. So when we apply the Hand of Chayula to a boss, it will automatically apply the Voltaic Mark and the Conductivity Curse, and we use Heightened Curse just for more curse effect. And last but not least, we have Combat Frenzy. Now, Combat Frenzy is an aura that will grant you frenzy charges when you electrocute an enemy, and this is why we have Electrocute here on our Tempest Flurry. We want to be electrocuting enemies so that we can generate frenzy charges. And in addition, we have Clarity Aura for just some more mana reservation, and we socket that too with Profusion for a chance to gain more charges. And finally we have Grim Feast, so in order to double our energy shield, and enemies will drop energy shield remnants when we kill them. I need to mention that all your gems must be level 19 or 20 with 20% quality. You need 150 spirit. It's nice to run Clarity, and you do not really need to run Precision. Moving on to our skill tree, let's start with the Ascendancy. We're going to be taking Lead Me Through Grace to gain spirit from our evasion and energy shield on our body armor. We're going to be taking I Am the Blizzard and I Am the Thunder for more damage. And finally, Sunder My Enemies so that our critical hits ignore monster elemental resistances. Now you can go for Meditate to replenish your energy shield, but we already have Grim Feast for that. Or you can go for Unbound Avatar for more single target damage. So if you want to go either of those, you can drop I Am the Thunder. Moving on to our tree. Now on the tree we're going to be focusing on attributes, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, and some survivability. we're going to be taking the critical damage node here, the defense node here, going up the critical cluster here, pathing right up to the resonance keystone. Now the resonance keystone is essential for the build. It allows us to gain power charges instead of frenzy charges, and when we gain the frenzy charges, we're going to be consuming them to activate our charge staff, and we gain frenzy charges from our combat frenzy aura. Moving up, we're going to be taking the crit node here, and here we have a unique jewel. More on the unique jewels later. Going up here for our second keystone, which is Eternal Youth. It allows us to recharge our energy shield with our life flask. Moving up to the critical cluster here, and our third keystone, Chaos Inoculation, which makes our maximum life 1, but we become immune to chaos damage, poison damage, and bleeding. And pathing up, taking the energy shield node and the intelligence node. Now moving down, we're going to be taking the power charge wheel here, the quarterstaff cluster here, some defense, some dexterity, and attack speed per dexterity, more unique jewels here, talking about the unique jewels later, a critical cluster here, pathing down for another critical cluster here, and finally the attribute cluster right here. And I forgot to mention that we'll be taking the spectral ward node here for more defense. Moving on to our jewels. Now we'll be taking 3 sapphire jewels, or blue jewels if you prefer, that have the increased energy shield stat. Now for the other ones, I recommend to have 1 jewel that has 2% mana on kill, or 2 jewels with 1% mana on kill each, and the other stats would be crit damage and crit chance. And the last rare jewel will be a ruby jewel that has gained rage on melee hit to help us maintain the 30 rage stacks. Now the other mods aren't that important. Maximum fire res is nice, melee damage, elemental damage, or attack damage, they just slightly boost your damage. You can do without, but it's mandatory to gain 1 rage on melee hit. As for the price of these jewels, the ruby jewel isn't at all expensive. Can we have a look here? This is nothing, but the blue jewels are quite expensive. Let's have a look at this one, shall we? This is quite expensive. My advice, if you're building this on a budget, just get a jewel that has max energy shield and 1% mana of kill. Get 2 of those, and get another one that has crit damage and crit chance without any energy shield or mana on kill. Moving on to our unique jewels, first we have the controlled metamorphosis. Now what this jewel does is that it allows us to allocate points that are not connected to our tree directly, on the penalty of giving us -2 elemental resistances and chaos resistances. Now chaos resistance does not matter because we are CI, we are immune to chaos damage. However, we're gonna need to compensate on the -6 to elemental resistances on the gear. The thing is that this jewel is the more expensive, the less elemental resistances it gives us. If you buy a -20%, it will be cheaper than the -5 or 6 or 7%. And we're going to be allocating the crit node here with the 10 intelligence, with the spectification node here for 7% increased attributes. We don't really care about the light radius, chaos resistance, chaos damage, or movement speed. Secondly, we have the Against the Darkness Time Loss jewel. Now this jewel adds stats to our notables. Here I have the gain 4% of damage as fire, 4% increased dexterity. It will add these 2 stats to each one of those 3 notables. So I have this jewel allocated here to get as much power as I can from it. Now I am using gain extra damage as fire because we need an extra source of fire damage to proc with our Rising Tempest. But if you cannot afford that, just get adds fire damage to attacks on your rings. Thirdly, we have our Megalomaniac Diamond. Now this jewel is quite powerful. It allows us to allocate nodes on the tree without passing through them. I have one with Breath of Lightning and Subterfuge Mask. Now Breath of Lightning isn't quite important. It gives us some dexterity and some lightning man. But what I want here is a Subterfuge Mask. It's right here. It gives us 2 evasion per 1 maximum energy shield on our helmet. Moving on to our last jewel, the Heroic Tragedy. Now this jewel allows us to change the keystone here to Circular Teachings, gaining 1% of energy shield per 2 strength. As we are stat stacking with 427 strength, we're gonna be gaining up to 2k energy shield. And it's important for this jewel to work properly, you need to get one with Deeds by the Line of Arona. And finally the gear. Now we'll be using the Pillar of the Cage God, of course, with the 8% attack speed corruption. Now if this is too expensive for you, you can just get one with 3 sockets and socket an additional attack speed soul core in it. Moving on to the gloves, we'll be using the Hands of Wisdom. Now this works with perfect synergy with the Pillar of the Cage God for the line increase attack speed per 25 dexterity. Here we have increase attack speed per 5 dexterity, and as we can see on our tree, we have this note right here, increase attack speed per 15 dexterity. So we'll be gaining a lot of attack speed. In addition to that, we'll be gaining 1 to 10 lightning damage per 10 intelligence, and this works perfectly because we are also stat stacking intelligence. As you can see here, if I remove my gloves, I'll be dropping down from 547k to only 92k. Moving on to the chest, we'll be using a Warrior Invictus that had the stats increase 5% attributes per socketed rune or soul core and 10% allures per socketed rune or soul core. Now this body armor has 4 sockets, and corruption you can have up to 5. In addition, we'll be using this armor not only to scale our attributes, but also to scale our elemental resistance. So if I remove this, I'm down to 5, 10, and 10%. So almost all the elemental resistance is coming from this armor. Moving on to our helmet. Now for the helmet, you ideally want to get resistances, maybe some intelligence, but the most important thing is that you get energy shield, because when getting a big number of energy shield, we can benefit greatly from this node right here, plus 2 to evasion per 1 maximum energy shield on our equipped helmet. If I go to my evasion, I have 72%. When I remove my helmet, I will be down to 59. As for the amulet, well, the best in slot amulet for this build is the Astromantis. However, I can do all content in the game without it, so I'm not going to bother. Now, you try to aim for as much attributes as you can. In addition, it's nice if you can get mana and flat energy shield. Flat energy shield on the amulet is very strong. As you can see, I have 81, and just for that, I get 1k energy shield. In addition, we want to be allocating insightfulness on the tree. Insightfulness is a node that gives us increased energy shield, increased mana regeneration, and 6% increased intelligence. As for the boots, we want to aim for a high number of energy shield, maybe some intelligence, resistances of course, and maybe some mana. Now I don't have movement speed on my boots because I don't need movement speed. I move with my Tempest Flurry that relies on my attack speed, and attack speed is scaled by dexterity on our gloves, on our tree, and even on our quarterstaff. So we do not need movement speed. As for the rings, we want to use 2 breach rings ideally because they can get quality up to 50%. We want as much attributes as we can. We can even get elemental resistances or the fizz damage to attacks, cold damage, lightning damage, or fire damage to attacks. As for the belt, the best in slot belt is the Ingenuity. We'll be getting one above 70% that can scale our rings greatly. Ideally, you want to be using an immunity to freeze charm. And finally, our mana flask, the melting maelstrom. This is only for quality of life. If you cannot afford it, you don't need to get it, but this is nice because it can replenish our mana instantly. Let's talk a bit about the soul cores I'm using. On the Pillar of the Cage God, I'm using the attack speed soul cores. On my armor, I'm using 4 elemental resistance soul cores. As for the others, I am using the soul core of Ascapa that gives us rarity on our gear. Now, my thoughts on rarity are that if you can afford rarity, buy gear with rarity. If you cannot afford rarity, you don't need a big amount. 50 to 100 is perfectly fine. After that, you won't be getting as much. I have 200 on my gear, but it's only after I got everything I needed that I started min-maxing to get rarity. In addition, I need to mention that on my skill tree, all the small attribute nodes are allocated as dexterity. This is very personal. You're gonna need to min-max as you want. Strength will give you defenses from the Verona jewel here and damage from the Pillar of the Cage God. Dexterity will give you attack speed everywhere, and intelligence will give you lightning damage from the gloves. I need to say that this build is quite expensive to replicate. I will be putting on the screen the breakdown of everything I bought and how much it cost me. So if you want to replicate it, make sure that you have the currency. I might be working on a budget build for later. Now I need to mention that some builds might use Cast on Crit, Cast on Shock, or Herald of Ash, or Flicker Strike. I did not get to test that out yet, but this is what I have for now. As always, thank you for watching, thank you for your support, like if you like, subscribe if you want. I hope to do this full time someday.